based out of Indianapolis. We're joined by Marc Daniels, voice of UCF Knights and, of course, Athletics. He joins us on 365 Sports. Marc, get off vacation. It's time to go.
Brother, I'm ready to go. First day of camp. It's nice and hot. I'm grilling right now out back at my house because it's still grilling season, but we got a football game in 4 weeks. Let's play.
All right, what are you grilling?
We got some chicken kale sausage, some boneless pork chops, and chicken breast.
Very good. Very nice. Very healthy.
Thanks.
Very good. Marc Daniels, again, we've had Marc on and got to know him back when all things changed in the summer and the fall of 2021. So it's the first day of camp. Expectations, if you were to say on a scale of 1 to 10, if I said 7, would that be a pretty good number?
For UCF fans, no.
Okay,
No.
a scale of 1 to 10, 12.
Well, I mean, it's late July, early August. Everybody has high expectations. You know, it's interesting, guys. Every team is still trying to figure out what the new Big 12 is going to be. I do think even though, a school like Utah maybe has earned that preseason ranking, a Kansas State with the players they're bringing back, Kansas, I do think that there's a bunch, and obviously Arizona, there's a bunch of other teams that I think feel like, look, we're close. And a few, games that go our way, and as we've talked before, I think UCF had that feeling last year as they're going through the Big 12, learning what the conference is about, that now they're better prepared for it. I don't know what the number is, guys. I'm always interested in the journey. Important games early lay the foundation for how you may play the rest of the year. I think a UCF fan outside of opening the season looks at, a first conference home game as Colorado and Dion in prime time. They've got a non-conference game in Gainesville. It's going to be a massive game in this state. Utah comes here on Black Friday. So I think there's that level of excitement. But I think they feel as if Gus Malzahn's been aggressive in building a roster that Gus says he thinks can contend in the Big 12. So fans obviously have that type of expectation.
KJ Jefferson, I mean, he was one of those big gets, and obviously Gus has had a lot of success with quarterbacks, but this matchup in particular just seems to fit so well, Marc, of each side likes what the other has to offer. Why do you think this will be a good one out on the field for the Knights, and just how has KJ already kind of acclimated himself to Orlando and the community?
First thing, I think he's developed has leadership skills that has, gone into effect. When he got here in January, you meet your teammates, you could do some off-season workouts. Just spring, I think, saw a commitment from him, like, guys, let's go. And people said, okay, this guy means business. And now coming into this camp in here late July, early August, there's an understanding. He was voted one of the 14 captains for UCF. He fits the mold and style of play. It's unfair to compare anybody to Cam Newton, but the way Gus used Cam, I think you see some similarities here. I'm not quite sure they're going to run KJ as much as Cam because of the depth in backfield for UCF. But he's a big dude. He can throw the football. He's got a bunch of starts under his belt. He's not going to be overwhelmed by any environment. And I think his teammates see how that experience comes into play. So it's easy to follow him. And I think he's confident in his ability. I think he sees how UCF has built an offense around him. And, Gus knew KJ, obviously, Gus being from Arkansas, knows everybody in that state. So there was a natural connection there. And I think Gus sold him on, hey, this is what we ran with Cam. This is what we want to run with you. And I think it was very appealing for KJ, who maybe just needed a fresh start.
Yeah, and I think that's what's kind of fun about the transfer portal is even if you were okay, and maybe even okay good, there's always some breath of fresh air. And with Malzahn's history, with all due respect to Arkansas, Sam Pittman, whatever, it just seemed like it's a match that kind of gives him a toy.
Yeah, it is. And guys, look, if you go back and take a look at Gus's offenses at Auburn when they were really rolling, it was the athletic quarterback, but it also was a 1-2 punch when it came to running backs. Obviously, his time at Arkansas when McFadden and Jones were there. And I'm saying, it may be an unfair comparison, but between KJ, his size, and ability to run, the return of R.J. Harvey and what we saw with him last year becoming one of the better backs and maybe what I think was the best running back conference in the country. And again, this year, adding Penny Boone, who had great success at the MAC, a brief stop at Louisville, a 1,400-yard rusher, there's a sense of we can ground and pound you. And that may not be the modern-day college football. It's not the UCF won't spread you out a little bit. But I think Gus knows you've got to be able to run the football. We saw that in the games that UCF felt like they were a possession or two away, the way teams dominated the line and ran the ball. And I think Gus's philosophy is if I get a lead on you in the fourth quarter, you got to stop this. And I think that's kind of more what Gus was like when he competed for SEC titles at Auburn.
You cover the team as closely as anybody. What is your biggest question mark entering camp?
Well, look, one, did UCF get better at the areas that they needed to get better from a standpoint of Big 12? That was the quality of lines. We've talked about that before. They brought in some bodies in the offensive line. Until they go play games, you won't really know how good that line is. That's one area there. Two, linebacker, they were really shorthanded last year. They went out and aggressively pursued some linebackers. Ethan Barr, another guy that came in. He's a Vanderbilt transfer, voted team captain. He's going to help them a lot at the middle linebacker spot. So are they better on the offensive line? Do they now have linebackers that can, one, get pressure on quarterbacks, can help cover, can, not get beat on the outside? I think their secondary significantly better. It wasn't bad last year, but I think they're bigger and stronger there. So offensive line, I think, is going to be better. The backside of the defense, I think, needs to be better, and I think they feel like they're better. But, again, you've got to go play. But I think Gus clearly believes he's got the best team since he's been here, which has been, trying to compete in the American, then building a roster to the Big 12, experiencing a year in the Big 12. And now I think he feels like, as he looks around the league, okay, I think I've got some pieces that give us a chance to contend. It's a very challenging schedule, an exciting schedule for UCF fans, but that's why we look forward to playing all of them.
I'm glad you brought up that latter part, because I was going to ask you, and I paused because it's 4 years in, but the way you just described it there, does it finally feel like it's kind of all of Gus's team for maybe the first time, the way that he's had time to sort of design it all?
Yeah, absolutely, guys. I think, remember when Gus got here, UCF did not know they were going to the Big 12. There was a hope, but he didn't know what's going to happen. So I think he felt like, okay, what am I inheriting? Let me build a roster. And then when the Big 12 news comes, you've got to try to compete where you are, at the same time pivot to get into the recruiting games. And look, I think Gus has been outstanding in recruiting, and his class is on pace right now to be a top 20, 25 class, which for UCF had been unheard of, and that's competing against everybody else in the country. One of the better portal classes in the country. So I think now he's really starting to build what he wants. He's learned a little bit about what he needs to do in the Big 12. I think he feels comfortable what he's brought in for the offense that he wants to run. And I think now, yes, his fingerprints are all over the place. There are very few players that are not Gus players on this roster. And I think he feels like, hey, this is the best position we've been in. And because of the league being open, wide open, I think he feels like there's no reason why we can't. Look, UCF knows there's a bunch of challenging games in the schedule. I think they feel like there's no game they can't win. Well, I think last year they felt like, hey, we hope to contend in these games. Let's see what happens. I think there's a sense of there's no game we can't compete. Doesn't mean we're going to win them. But I think we're in a better position to compete. They have a better idea what this league is about.
What does Ted Roof bring to the table?
Experience, one, because he's coached so long in college football, but he and Gus have worked together before. I think there's a comfort level there. And, look, the guy that was the DC last year is still on the coaching staff, and Gus thinks very highly of. There was a sense of, look, maybe we've just got to add a veteran mind here that can see things. We've got to get bigger, stronger, faster. Maybe philosophy, we've got to figure out what exactly we want to do. And look, I think last year UCF competed well. They just didn't have the horses to kind of compete against some of the Big 12 offenses that we played last year. I think they're bigger, stronger. I think they feel like they got better tacklers right now. Then you throw in what I think, and every offense wants to be more aggressive, but I do think UCF feels like they're going to take a few more risks that I think you may see them blitz a little bit more, where they were a little bit hesitant to do that before because you weren't sure about, going man on man. I think they feel better now about how they disguise their defenses and attack people. I think UCF likes their defensive front, which has some really experienced guys. And from that standpoint, I think Ted's going to be a little bit more aggressive. And I think the familiarity with Gus, I think, goes a long way as well. Gus is now choosing to get back involved a lot more with offensive play calling. I think he feels like, look, Ted can handle the defense. Let me get involved offensively. And I think he feels really good about where he's at coaching-wise with his staff.
When you think about I think the offensive line last year was piecemealed and struggled at times. There's going to always be something that doesn't go well, and they're trying to do better on the run defense, and Roof is there for that. Of everything they needed, which was fixed by more, the transfer portal or what they brought in among high school students the last couple of years, high school recruiting?
Well, I'm not going to dodge your question, but I do think it was both. I think the portal, the last 2 years, I think Gus and his staff did a great job in saying, okay, who can we add that's going to help us in the areas that we need and go get them and be successful in doing that. At the same time, I think Gus felt like we still have to be aggressive from a high school standpoint. And if you just look at where the classes are going to be ranked this year, where the class was ranked last year, I think they've really done an amazing job. I mean, again, right now, and you got a long way to go until kids sign. Most people have UCF as a top 20 class, and that's unheard of at UCF. And I think Gus now has figured out how to recruit in-state kids to win some battles against the, quote, big schools in the state. He's convinced some kids that years ago would have left to go play, and I mean no disrespect, to go to an NC State or to go to Pitt or to go to Iowa State, to say, no, you can come here. And he's winning most of those battles now. So it's a mix of both. And you've got to be portal active, and yet at the same time, I think you've got to feel aggressive that you can win some state battles. So I think they've gone after the spots. I know we need help. Again, linebacker last year was glaring. Went out, got a couple guys, three guys that helped from the portal, and yet still took some guys from the high school area. I think next year's class, he's got some playmakers, wide receivers that really stand out. So Gus is going to build it both ways. Whatever that number is, if it's 60-40 portal to high school, he's done a great job. And I really think if you take a look at the transfer portal rankings and high school recruiting rankings, UCF is probably further along than people thought they'd be. And I think Gus, who's got such a great reputation in the state to begin with, has done a great job. And they've done a great job selling it. And guys, it's changed today. Now you're not trying to sell the kid on Taj Mahal. It is NIL or revenue share, whatever it is. But it's also, hey, come here and compete for conference championships, and can we make the playoffs? He's flipped some kids from programs that people don't think he can flip. So it's a good time, but now we got to go play and win games. If we don't win games, nobody's happy. Yeah,
been very cool seeing some of the splashes they've made in recruiting. But you mentioned in-state there. I don't want to fast forward too much, but I do have to ask, because we're going to get so caught up in the week-to-week here pretty soon. But how big of a deal is that to see Florida and that trip to Gainesville on the schedule, having not played that many times, but the last time, as we know, the big bowl victory over Florida? How big of a deal was that a couple years back, Mark, and how big of a deal and opportunity is it to have Florida on the schedule again this year?
Well, I've called every UCF Florida game. The first couple were just, come get a check and take the loss and go home. The bowl game was a great day for UCF. For Florida, it's a transition, a coaching change. A lot of guys missing the game. It doesn't take anything away what it meant to UCF. The first time that they're going to play a regular season football game that has value to both teams, where I do think the other side has no choice but to look at UCF differently than they have in the past. Florida's program is where it's at right now, trying to figure out who they are and what they can be. There's great momentum for UCF. There's a fascinating storyline that could develop, for that. Hey, maybe Florida beats Miami. Maybe Florida beats Texas A&M. Maybe they're 4-0 when you get to that game. Maybe UCF is 4-0 when you get to that game. Maybe Florida stubs their toe a couple of times. And makes even more pressure on Billy Napier. I will say this, and this is my 30th year of UCF football. There's no regular season game that's been a more sought-after ticket on the road for UCF fans than this. They give you 5,000 tickets. If UCF fans had their choice, they'd put 30,000 up there. If Florida loses a couple of games and they're 2-2, then you may get 30,000 UCF fans there. So it sets the stage for a great game. Both teams have a lot of work to do before you get there. UCF cannot take the game at TCU for granted. It's going to be a really hard football game. And then you come home and get Dion coming to the Sunshine State for a primetime game. So there's a lot of stuff before you get there. But it could end up being a real magical night. It could be one of those awkward nights for Florida if the season's not going well. It's a big deal. And even a Gator fan now has to admit it's a big deal just because of where their program's at and how important it is. And a loss to UCF would really rattle Florida fans. They'd love to win the game comfortably and say, look, little stepchild, you're not who we are. But it's a little bit different vibe this time.
Yeah, no question. Mark, thank you for your time, man. It's here, as you said. Practice began today. A bunch of schools, 16 over the next 3 days, with most of the chunk of them, I think 12 of them or so, maybe 11 or 12 of them starting their workouts on Wednesday, another handful, small couple of teams tomorrow. Thanks for your time, as always. Always appreciate your honesty and also your knowledge and history of UCF football and athletics. And I don't want you to, burn that food, so get off the phone and go take care of your dinner.
I just flipped the chicken breast and the sausage right now. Anytime, guys, look forward to chatting with you again throughout the season. Take care.
Voice of UCF Athletics, Marc Daniels, with us on 365 Sports.
Yes.